In the greatest moments of challenge, when the world demands explanation and defense, silence can become your most powerful spiritual tool. This profound truth is exemplified in one of history's most significant moments, when Jesus stood before his accusers during his trial and chose the path of silence. This wasn't mere passivity, it was a deliberate spiritual activation. The silence of Jesus before Pontius Pilate and the Sanhedrin represents one of the most misunderstood yet powerful spiritual teachings available to us. Cayce, in his spiritual readings, offered a remarkable perspective on this silence that transforms our understanding of spiritual power in the face of adversity. When Jesus stood before his accusers, the Gospel of Matthew tells us, he answered nothing. This wasn't the response of someone defeated or without words. It was the deliberate choice of someone accessing a higher vibrational state of consciousness. In that moment, Christ demonstrated that true spiritual power often manifests not through explanation or defense, but through elevation beyond the chaos of accusation. What happens when we choose silence in the face of judgment? According to Cayce's insights, we activate spiritual frequencies that cannot be reached through verbal engagement. The physical world operates on lower vibrational patterns. The need to explain, defend, argue, and justify. These are ego-based responses that keep us tethered to lower consciousness. But silence, conscious, deliberate silence, can lift us immediately into higher realms of spiritual awareness. Think of silence as a doorway. When accusations fly and judgment surrounds you, your natural human instinct is to respond, to correct misunderstandings, to defend your honor or integrity. Yet in choosing silence, you step through a doorway into a different dimension of spiritual experience. This is what Jesus demonstrated. His silence wasn't weakness, it was transcendence. This silence represents what spiritual masters throughout the ages have called rising above. What? When we remain silent in the face of accusation, we refuse to engage with the lower energies being directed at us. Instead, we choose to operate from a higher level of consciousness where such attacks cannot reach us. Jesus wasn't ignoring his accusers. He was showing them, and us, that there exists a plane of consciousness beyond the reach of worldly judgment. The vibrational nature of this silence is crucial to understand. Every word we speak carries energy and vibration. When we respond to accusation with defense, we match and often amplify the negative energy being directed toward us. We become entangled in it. Silence, by contrast, creates a vibrational mismatch. The accusations find no energetic landing place, no hook upon which to attach. They are left to dissolve in the space of non-response. This spiritual activation through silence creates what mystics call a force field of protection around your being. It's not passive, it's intensely active on an energetic level. While your physical body remains still and your voice silent, your spirit is engaged in powerful work. You are actively choosing which energetic frequencies you will participate in. In your own life, think of moments when you've been misunderstood, accused, or judged unfairly. Your immediate response likely involved mental preparation of a defense, gathering evidence to support your position, and formulating explanations. These are natural human reactions, but they keep you bound to the level of consciousness where the attack originated. What would happen if, like Jesus, you chose silence instead? Not a resentful silence, not the silence of fear, but the conscious silence of spiritual elevation. In that silence, you might discover what Jesus demonstrated, that your spiritual essence remains untouched by accusation, that your true self needs no defense, and that by refusing to engage with lower vibrations, you activate higher spiritual frequencies within yourself. This silence becomes a form of spiritual alchemy. It transforms what could be a moment of defensive reaction into an opportunity for transcendence. The potential energy that would have been used in defense is instead channeled upward, raising your vibrational state and strengthening your spiritual connection. Remember, this teaching isn't about becoming passive in the face of injustice. It's about recognizing when words serve a higher purpose and when silence becomes the more powerful spiritual choice. Jesus spoke often and powerfully throughout his ministry. He taught, challenged, and confronted when necessary. His silence during the trial was a deliberate spiritual strategy for that specific moment, showing us that sometimes silence is the highest form of spiritual activation available to us. The trial of Jesus presents us with one of the most profound spiritual paradoxes. In his apparent vulnerability before his accusers, Christ demonstrated extraordinary spiritual protection through the power of silence. This wasn't merely a passive response to aggression, it was an active spiritual shield against the energies of judgment and condemnation. According to Cayce's spiritual insights, Jesus' silence served as a powerful, energetic boundary. When we speak in response to accusation, we create an energetic bridge between ourselves and our accusers. Words become the conduits through which negative energies travel, amplify, and gain strength. By choosing silence, Jesus effectively closed this circuit, preventing the flow of destructive energies into his energetic field. This spiritual principle operates on the understanding that energy follows attention. When we verbally engage with accusation, we direct our attention and energy towards the very forces seeking to diminish us. We become entangled in the lower vibrational patterns of defense, justification, and counter-accusation. Jesus demonstrated that silence redirects this attention inward, toward the divine presence within, creating an impenetrable shield against external judgment. Consider what happens energetically when you're accused or judged unfairly. The natural human reaction creates an immediate energetic disturbance within your field. Your heart rate increases, stress hormones flood your system, and your thoughts race toward defense. In this state, you become energetically vulnerable, with your boundaries weakened by emotional reactivity. Speaking from this place often leaves you more exposed, not less. The silence Jesus chose wasn't about avoiding confrontation, but about maintaining energetic sovereignty. He demonstrated that we need not absorb or respond to every energy directed toward us. This silence created what spiritual teachers call sacred space, an energetic buffer zone where harmful intentions lose their power before reaching our essential self. Cayce suggested that had Jesus engaged verbally with his accusers, he would have inadvertently fed the very energies arrayed against him. Words spoken in defense would have validated the accusations as worthy of response, giving them substance and power they did not inherently possess. His silence demonstrated the spiritual truth that not all energies deserve our engagement or acknowledgement. This spiritual protection extends beyond the individual to affect the collective energy field. When Jesus stood silent before Pilate, he wasn't just protecting his own energetic integrity, he was introducing a completely different frequency into a situation dominated by fear, anger, and judgment. His silence created a momentary rupture in the normal patterns of accusation and defense, offering a glimpse of a higher way of being. The protective power of silence works on multiple dimensions simultaneously. On the physical plane, it prevents the escalation that often comes with verbal defense. On the emotional plane, it preserves inner peace amid external chaos. On the mental plane, it maintains clarity rather than becoming entangled in justifications. And on the spiritual plane, it affirms our connection to a higher truth beyond temporal judgments. This teaching offers profound guidance for our own encounters with judgment and accusation. When we feel the natural urge to defend ourselves, we might pause and ask, would my words serve a higher purpose here? Or would silence offer greater spiritual protection? Is this a moment for explanation, or a moment to demonstrate the power of non-engagement? The spiritual protection that silence offers isn't about escaping consequences or avoiding responsibility. Jesus fully accepted the worldly consequences of his trial. Rather, this protection operates on the level of spiritual integrity, maintaining connection to your highest truth regardless of external circumstances. It's about preserving what matters most, your inner light, even when external darkness seems to surround you. Silence as spiritual protection requires tremendous inner strength. It's not the silence of fear or submission, but the silence of spiritual sovereignty. It comes from knowing that your true worth is established in the divine, not in human opinion or judgment. This was the unshakable foundation from which Jesus maintained his silence, his absolute knowledge of who he was and whose he was. In practical terms, this teaching invites us to develop discernment about when to speak and when to remain silent. Not every accusation requires defense. Not every judgment deserves response. By choosing silence in moments of attack, we can create an energetic shield that protects not only ourselves, but creates space for higher truth to emerge. The most remarkable aspect of this spiritual protection is that it disarms the aggressor in unexpected ways. When we respond to attack with defense, we perpetuate the cycle of conflict. But when we respond with conscious silence, we introduce a new element that often confuses and ultimately disarms those operating from lower consciousness. Jesus' silence before Pilate left the Roman governor perplexed. "Don't you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you?" he asked, unable to comprehend Jesus' calm non-resistance. This disarming quality of silence creates protection not through force, but through transcendence. It demonstrates that there exists a spiritual position beyond the reach of worldly power, a place where threats lose their potency and accusations their sting. By accessing this state through silence, Jesus showed us a path to spiritual protection, available to all who understand its principles. As you face your own moments of judgment or accusation, remember this teaching. The silence of Jesus wasn't defeat, it was spiritual mastery at the highest level. It offers us a model of how to maintain our spiritual integrity even in the face of the greatest injustice, and how to find protection not in the words we speak, but in the divine presence we access through conscious silence. In the final moments before his crucifixion, Jesus demonstrated perhaps the most challenging spiritual teaching of all, the deliberate choice to respond from spirit rather than ego. This distinction lies at the heart of spiritual transformation and represents the ultimate test of our commitment to higher consciousness. The ego, by its very nature, demands defense. When accused, it insists on justification. When attacked, it requires retaliation. When misunderstood, it craves explanation. These reactions feel natural because they are the ego's attempt at self-preservation. Yet Jesus showed us another way, a response that transcends the ego's demands and emerges from the deepest wellspring of spirit. Cayce's spiritual readings illuminate this profound aspect of Jesus' silence. When standing before his accusers, Christ made a conscious choice between two possible responses: the ego's desperate need for immediate vindication, or the soul's acceptance of temporary suffering as part of a greater spiritual purpose. His silence represents the triumph of spiritual wisdom over egoic reaction. This distinction becomes clearer when we consider what the ego-driven response would have looked like. Jesus could have eloquently defended himself. He could have called witnesses to his good works. He could have performed miracles to demonstrate his divine authority. From the ego's perspective, these would have been reasonable responses to unjust accusations. Yet he chose another path, one that the ego cannot comprehend but the spirit recognizes as transcendent wisdom. The ego operates from fear of loss, fear of diminishment, fear of death. It sees threats everywhere and mobilizes all resources to defend against them. The spirit, by contrast, operates from love and trust in the divine order of all things. It recognizes that some processes must unfold according to a higher timeline than the ego's immediate demands for resolution. Jesus' silence demonstrated profound trust in this divine timing. He understood that true vindication doesn't come through winning arguments, but through living in alignment with higher truth. The ego seeks to win. The spirit seeks to transform. His silence wasn't about winning or losing in that moment. It was about introducing a transformative presence into a situation dominated by fear and judgment. This teaching challenges us at our core. When we face our own trials and accusations, we feel the ego's pull toward immediate self-defense. The impulse to explain ourselves, to correct misunderstandings, to prove our innocence. These are powerful urges arising from our most primal need for security and belonging. To choose silence instead requires tremendous spiritual maturity and trust in something beyond the ego's limited perspective. The spirit understands what the ego cannot, that sometimes the highest response to injustice is not immediate justice, but transcendent love. Jesus demonstrated this when he later spoke from the cross. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." This wasn't the voice of someone defeated. It was the voice of someone who had completely transcended the ego's need for retribution. This spiritual choice manifests as radical acceptance, not a passive resignation to circumstances, but an active embrace of the present moment as containing exactly what's needed for spiritual growth. Jesus didn't silently endure his trial because he had no other option. He chose silence as his spiritual response, recognizing it as the highest expression of his mission in that moment. The practical application of this teaching invites us to examine our own reactions when faced with accusation or misunderstanding. The ego immediately prepares its defense, gathering evidence, rehearsing arguments, seeking allies. But what would happen if we paused in that moment and asked, what would my spirit choose here rather than my ego? What response would serve the highest good rather than my need for immediate vindication? This spiritual choice doesn't mean we never speak in our own defense. Jesus himself spoke boldly at many points during his ministry. Rather, it invites us to discern which voice is prompting us to speak, the ego's fear or the spirit's wisdom. Sometimes speaking truth is the highest spiritual choice. Other times, silence serves a greater purpose. The key is developing the spiritual discernment to know the difference. The ego's reaction is automatic. The spirit's response is chosen. This is perhaps the most significant distinction. Jesus wasn't silent because he had nothing to say. He was silent because he chose that response from a place of spiritual sovereignty. His silence wasn't forced upon him. It was a deliberate spiritual strategy chosen from complete freedom. This teaching offers profound guidance for our most challenging relationships and conflicts. When someone misunderstands or judges us unfairly, we have a choice in how we respond. The ego's path leads to endless cycles of defense and counter-accusation, keeping us bound to lower consciousness. The spirit's path, sometimes expressed through conscious silence, offers the possibility of transcendence and transformation. The paradox at the heart of this teaching is that in surrendering the ego's need for immediate justice, we access a greater justice that unfolds according to divine timing. Jesus appeared to lose everything through his silence, his freedom, his reputation, ultimately his life. Yet through that apparent loss came the greatest victory, not just for him, but for all humanity. This is the mystery the ego cannot comprehend, but the spirit recognizes as divine truth. As we integrate this teaching into our lives, we begin to understand that spiritual growth often requires us to act in ways that make no sense to the ego, but perfect sense to the spirit. The ego seeks comfort. The spirit seeks transformation. The ego demands immediate resolution. The spirit embraces necessary processes. The ego fears surrender. The spirit knows that in surrender lies our greatest power. Jesus' silence during his trial stands as an eternal invitation to all spiritual seekers to move beyond the ego's desperate need for self-preservation and into the spirit's acceptance of divine order. It challenges us to recognize that our highest spiritual contribution sometimes comes not through our clever words or self-defense, but through our willingness to transcend the very need for them. In your own moments of trial and accusation, remember this teaching. Ask yourself, am I responding from ego or from spirit? Is my reaction automatic or is it chosen? Am I seeking to win an argument or to contribute to transformation? The path of spirit, the path Jesus demonstrated through his silence, offers not the ego's temporary satisfaction, but the soul's eternal peace. If this message resonated with you today, take a moment to subscribe to our channel and join our spiritual community. Your journey of inner transformation matters, and we'd love to continue walking this path with you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. How has silence served as a spiritual tool in your own life? Remember, each time you engage, you help these timeless teachings reach others who might need them. Subscribe now, tap the notification bell, and let's grow together in wisdom and spiritual awareness.